best fight of 2022. When McBroom was destroyed by AnesonGib, no one could have thought that just 6 months later we would get a rematch. Will McBroom be able to prove that the defeat was a fluke? You will find out now. Austin Mcbroom. Austin Mcbroom showed immense talent from the very start of his career. Few people in their first fight can demonstrate such a good stance, speed, and footwork that Austin did against Bryce Hall. As a southpaw, he quickly stepped outside his opponent's lead foot, which is a basic but incredibly important technique in boxing. This technique is particularly crucial in fights between southpaws and orthodox fighters, as the fighter who positions their foot outside their opponent's always has the upper hand. These steps prevent the opponent from moving in that direction, severely limiting their attacking options. Therefore, a tall southpaw poses a significant challenge, as they can easily maintain distance with their jab. McBroom's entire strategy was built on this concept: jabbing to set up explosive attacks, stepping outside his opponent's lead foot, and striking from different angles. He frequently employed his feints to confuse his opponent and was adept at launching attacks. However, his defense was not as strong. It was immediately apparent how Austin positioned his hands when blocking. He did not keep them close to his face, leaving a sizable gap between his arms that made him vulnerable to straight punches and even hooks beyond the block. Even Bryce, who was not a formidable opponent, managed to land punches in these huge gaps in McBroom's defense. Even in the clinch, he maintained the same hand position, using his elbows to press against his opponent's body. While this is a Muay Thai technique, it seems out of place in boxing and does not serve to hold the opponent, leaving him open to punches. Despite beating his opponent throughout the entire fight, the referee seemed to have been promised a part of the money for Austin's victory because the way he behaved towards Bryce was disgusting. In conclusion, McBroom is a talented novice fighter with good footwork, who enjoys brawling, possesses great potential, but has a weak defense. AnesonGib. If McBroom is a naturally skilled fighter who honed his skills quickly, then AnesonGib is a true testament to hard work and perseverance. His fighting spirit and character are on a completely different level because Gib never gives up. At the beginning of his career, Gib struggled in the ring and looked foolish, but he kept pressing his opponents relentlessly. Even in his fight with Jake Paul, Gib charged forward, making the same mistakes he had always made, such as diving too much and leaving himself open to jabs and hooks. He made many unnecessary movements and jerks, while Jake effortlessly circled around him and inflicted serious damage. Despite being knocked down, Gib never gave up and kept pushing forward. Although he didn't have a chance of winning, it's worth noting that he wasn't actually knocked out. It was a technical knockout, or a TKO. After the fight, Gib went home and unleashed his insane character during training to correct his mistakes. When he stepped into the ring with Taylor Holder, he showed us a completely different Gib. There were no more jerky movements or excessive dives like in the fight with Jake Paul. Now he is calm and composed, like a professional boxer, feeling out the distance with his jab and only taking risks when he has prepared his attack. He is the same aggressive fighter, but much more careful. Now that we understand who McBroom and Gib were before the fight, we can finally figure out what happened in their bout. Gib versus McBroom won. Austin immediately began using footwork to create advantageous positions for himself, while Gib, as usual, pressed forward aggressively. Austin's talent became apparent as he began to feint to the left in order to move outside Gib's foot and attacking him with a lead hook, which resulted in a knockdown. In his fight with Jake Paul, Gib would have emotionally rushed towards his opponent seeking revenge, but this time, Gib reacted differently. He calmly accepted it. It was evident that Gib was losing the first part of the fight because of how skillfully McBroom maintained distance. McBroom was throwing jabs and hooks, feeling super confident. For every hit Gib landed, he would start running to retaliate, as Gib himself used to do in the past. His ego became a key problem for him as Gib persevered, and began his incredible comeback with counter-straight punches. In addition to the emotional factor, Gib found his range and started stepping outside his opponent's left leg, allowing him to land punches more frequently and cleanly. He would launch a strong attack and then immediately grab his opponent in a clinch, where it became clear that Austin didn't know what to do. He wasn't using his hands, and Gib was able to deal heavy damage even in the clinch. Mcbroom forgot about blocking and footwork, which gave Gib the opportunity to destroy him. In the end, Austin once again moved in too close, let Gib step over his leg. The fight looked as though Mcbroom was knocked out while still standing after the first knockdowns. He rushed towards his opponent with his jaw wide open, and that's where all the interest lay. How did a fighter who won the first 2 rounds so easily change his strategy so drastically and begin taking so many hits? Most likely, his lack of experience influenced him. You never know how you'll react to your first knockout in your life. Mcbroom smiled, twitched, and tried to fix everything, but he just needed to go into a tight defense and recover. Gib versus Mcbroom 2. Just 6 months later, the rematch is scheduled to happen soon. After his defeat, Mcbroom made a lot of excuses, claiming he had COVID, a temperature, injections, and anything else except for the real reason. The truth is that he overestimated his abilities, failed to maintain distance after the second round, and pressed someone who was too strong for him. However, there was no sign of illness in his fight. He performed excellently in the first 2 rounds and almost knocked out Gib. It seemed like an attempt to protect his bruised ego. Agreeing to a second fight with Gib with such excuses is dangerous because Gib is training even harder than before with no excuses for anything. He is a true hard worker and his persistence pays off, which is why he's respected. If you ask any coach, they will tell you that you cannot agree to such a heavy fight just 6 months after a bunch of knockdowns and a heavy knockout. Many boxers cannot recover their jaw after such defeats for their whole life. This fight is dangerous for Austin's health because I do not believe he will show his best result, and Gib will be even better than last time, which is obvious. If Mcbroom were in his best shape, he could keep his distance, fight smart, and win by decision. However, based on the experience of many fighters, 6 months is too little time to recover from such a devastating defeat. So Gib will knock him out even earlier than in the first fight. We can only hope that Mcbroom's brain won't sustain too much damage as a result.